Chapter 3. Thatcher was now gone, finally ousted from the pedestal from which she'd orchestrated a decade of division. But the world was in no less of a mess with the circus performer's son in charge. Looking over the Solent, Steve sucked in what he'd hoped was the last breath of sea air he'd take for some while, excited to be trading the cleanliness of the coast for whatever pungent aroma London was likely to suffocate him with. He was trading salt for soot. Was it true that the underground turned your snot black? Moving away meant leaving the community he'd grown up in, a place where everybody knew everybody else's business. He was transplanting into a city of impersonal crowds where the homeless masses huddled around a flame at night, desperate to keep out of the cold in the wild West End. He had no fear. It spelled opportunity and a fresh start. He was suddenly a grown-up person with a grown-up job. Arriving in the city, he quickly navigated his way past the flaming oil drums under the bridge outside Waterloo Station. He was 19 and within a week he relocated his life to London, landing a dream job that promised all the opportunity available for him to be able to do something meaningful with his life. His days of reading NME to be told what music he should be listening to were over. He was going to tell NME what they should be listening to. Steve Lewis made a resolution. Like Sting in Quadrophenia, he was going to be the face. Rather than heading straight to the flat Tina had sorted for him his first month in town, he walked the mile from Waterloo to the office near Denmark Street, a place where the last beatniks glided around their town in a hazy denial that the 60s were over. Le Cousins on Greek Street had now been closed for 2 decades, but that meant nothing to these ghosts of a different era. No matter how hard the 12-bar club tried to keep the spirit alive, the world had a different energy. Kids walked around the Centre Point building, guitars in hand, looking for the path to success by whatever means necessary. 1 or 2 would make it, but only those who were exceptionally good or extremely lucky. That band, which was drafted in and heard by chance on a good night when the record company had somebody down for a different band who had unfortunate technical difficulties. The demo tape that caught the talent spotter off guard enough that they listened to more than the opening 30 seconds, and by doing so, heard enough to take a chance. Only the 1 in a million bands in the right place at the right time would make it. The rest would fall by the wayside and spend their lives busking in the tube stations. Some would get into NME once, maybe more than once, but most failed to get anywhere near the heights that they set out to. Steve settled into this new world, defying the heckled doubts of his mates from home. He would never go backwards. He wouldn't need to go down the tried and tested route of university education and student lifestyle. It wasn't pride that meant he would never consider it, as Steve was not a proud man. Just a bloke who was confident in his abilities, purposeful and determined to succeed at whatever he set himself up to do. His mates were living in the small student communities of Bristol and Leeds, but doing the Otley pub crawl was nothing in comparison to getting a backstage pass when Morrissey played in London. He knew his role was at the bottom of the pile, tasked with taking on acts who were at the bottom with him. It was hard graft, but with great benefits. Tina proved a guiding hand to help shape his path, and things started to work. Some of the bottom-dwelling bands he inherited made the right noises that got them into the magazines that mattered, and with success came success. Having moved to London as the last chimes of Thatcherism faded, by the time President Blair took his place at the head of the table, it was no longer Steve making the calls to the venues. The bigger and better ones were now calling him. The dark, artistic depression of the 80s, which permeated every corner of the land as Steve arrived in London 6 years previous, had been replaced by the golden age of Britpop. The country seemed to be smiling again, and with it there was more fun to be had. Oasis was the epitome of New England, a society where the country pivoted on the sounds of Manchester, taking on all comers to their self-anointed status as the musical kings of England. Blur were a different strand of the same ilk, and the intense sounds of the Manics bellowed across the Severn Bridge. But it was the internet that was generating the greatest change in the way the game was played, and Steve had started to cement his position at the centre of it all. As New Labour opened the gates of Downing Street to the great and the good of British pop culture, Steve was starting to become the face he had set out to be. After years of grafting from a minibus on the M6 with small rising bands, the established artists were at his door. It was 1997. He was there.